Hey everyone, Mr. Laba here again with more Algebra 1 CP final exam review. This is over Chapter 3, Inequalities. Okay, so there's three basic types: regular inequalities, compound ands, compound ors, which we kind of classify those together as compounds, and then there's solving absolute value inequalities. Okay, so I'm going to take you through an example of those, and if you still have trouble with this, which sometimes people do, especially the compound ones, please seek out your teacher before you take the final exam and get some extra help. Okay, so the first one, these regular type ones, we call them regular because there's no or words in there, there's no absolute values, it's just simply one inequality. You do these just like you do normal equations, so you get the x by itself. Subtract 6 from each side, subtract 6. Again, I like putting the line down the middle for students who have a hard time. Obviously, if you could do this without putting the line right down the sign, you don't need to put it there. Gives you negative 12 on this side. Just pay close attention which way your inequality is pointing. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Sign stays the same. There's your answer. Okay, now one trick to consider here, one thing to be aware of. When you divide or multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative number, the sign flips directions. All right, so the inequality sign flips directions. Well, in this case, I divided that side by positive 3 and that side by positive 3. So I divided by a positive number, which is the reason that the sign, the inequality sign, does not flip. Okay, does not change directions. All right, once I have that, here's what I do. All right, there's my answer. If they ask me to draw a graph, I can go ahead and do that. I'm going to put negative 4, my answer, right in the middle. This would be an open dot on the negative 4 because if you look back at your inequality sign, which is right here, there's no equal to bar underneath there. So when there's an equal to bar, close the dot. When there's no equal to bar, like in this example, keep the dot open. All right, now when I go to shade, one really easy thing to do is just pick some numbers. Pick a number that's smaller than negative 4 because your negative 4 is your answer. Put it to the left. Pick a number that's larger than negative 4. Put it to the right. Okay, and then figure out when you plug in those answers which one makes it true. So here we are. For example, if I take the negative 5 and plug it into my answer, I have this. If I take the negative 3 and plug it into my answer, I have this. One of these will always be true. One of these will always be false. All right. Well, it says the top one says negative 4 is bigger or greater than negative 5. That's true. So I'm going to shade toward the negative 5 because the negative 5 was the number I plugged in to my answer that made this true. If I look at the second one here, negative 4 is greater than negative 3. That's false. Negative 4 is less than negative 3. So by plugging in the negative 3, it made my statement false. I don't want to shade toward the false. I want to shade toward the true. Okay, and we'll get into some more of these as we go through the examples. All right, so those are the basic kind, the regular kinds. Okay, now compound and. We call this compound for one reason. It looks more complicated than the regular ones that we just did. Okay. How is it more compound? Well, this one has two inequality signs. So I'm going to draw my lines right down the middle. And your goal here is just to still, it's the same thing, just get the x by itself, but this time in the middle. So this 3 needs to move. I'm moving that one first because it's not attached. Same rules apply. Negative 12 minus 3 is negative 15. Keep your arrow pointing the same direction. All right, now this one has an equal to bar underneath it. This one doesn't, so please be careful of that. You have 3x in the middle. 18 minus 3 is 15. Divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Do it everywhere. Negative 5, less than or equal to x, less than 5. Okay? For this course, it's a pretty safe bet that when you have and problems, compound ands, again, how do I know it's and? It's got the double inequality signs in the original problem. It's a very, 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 very safe bet, all right, that you could just plot both of your answers here. So negative 5, positive 5. And then if you look at your inequality, it says x is in between those two. So just shade in between those two. Now make sure you get the solid and closed dots part of this right. Well, the negative 5 has an equal to bar with it. So I'm going to close the dot. The positive 5 does not have an equal to bar, so I'm going to keep it open. And again, I'm going to shade in between the two, in the middle of them. Just look at how your answer is written right here. X is in the middle of negative 5 and 5, so shade in the middle part. Okay, so that's it with compound ands. Let's go to compound ors. Okay, compound or, again, pretty straightforward here. It's just two regular problems, and you graph them on the same graph, okay, if they ask you to graph it. So do one problem first, then do the second problem. So minus 5, 2x is greater than 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, x is greater than 1. Done. Okay, go to the next problem here. Okay, I wrote kind of big, so I'm going to kind of put the work over here. So I only have one step in this one. All right, I'm going to divide by -2, divide by -2. Now, careful. It's what we were talking about earlier. I divided both sides by a negative number, so this has to change directions. It has to flip. My arrow was pointing to the right. Now I'm going to point it to the left because I divided both sides by -2. That gives you -3. Okay, so here's my final answer for this one. X is greater than 1. Put the word or in the middle, just like it is in the problem. Don't leave that out. Or x is greater than -3. Okay, there's my answer. Now, if you're going to draw the graph, it's really, 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 really simple. All you're going to do is you're going to put both things on the same graph. Okay, so I'm going to draw my graph. Now, make sure you put these in numerical order. So I have a 1 as part of my answer and a -3 as part of my answer. -3's got to go to the left because -3 is smaller than 1. All right, and then now it says this, x is greater than 1. So open circle. Greater than means to the right. X is bigger than 1, so shade to the right. All right, and then the other side here, x is less than -3. All right, so again, it's open. Less than -3 is this way. All right, more times than not, all right, not always, so just make sure you're aware of this, but more times than not, when you get an OR problem, the graph will look like this. It'll have the two tails shaded, the two arrows shaded, the two tail ends of it. When you get an AND problem, all right, you'll have in between shaded. That's kind of a good rule for this class. Again, it's not always the case, but it's a good rule just to go back and check your answers. You know, if you don't get both tails shaded in for an OR problem, just double check, make sure you didn't do anything wrong. Again, it is possible that won't happen, but most of the problems it works that way. All right, now absolute value. This is tricky. Before you can do anything, you have to get it to look like this. Absolute value with stuff in it. All right, and then some sort of inequality sign and some sort of number. All right, well, right now, I don't have that because on the left side of my inequality, I don't just have stuff inside the absolute value. All right, I have this negative or this positive 1 here that's got to move first, so I'm going to move this. Same way you'd always move it. Now here's what I got. X minus 2 is less than 3. Okay, I'm going to just rewrite this real quick here. Now the trick with absolute values is you have to split them up. You have to make them AND problems or problems, all right, to solve them. You have to make them two separate problems. There's a little trick that we use to do that. We look at the sign that's there, all right? Again, you have to make sure you have stuff, absolute value sign, and some sort of number over here. You can't split it until you have that, okay? When I look at the sign here, this sign is a less than sign. So think of it this way. Less than, okay, a greater than sign, or basically we could use that rule to determine what kind of inequality it's going to be. So if I have a less than sign there, it's going to turn into an AND problem. If I had a great OR sign, it's going to turn into an OR problem. So here's how I do it. All right, less thans make it ANDs. Okay, and again, this is only for absolute value, while in ANDs, if you look up to the previous example we did, right up here, I'm going to go further here, right up here. Okay, ANDs have these double inequality signs there, so we have to set it up that way. Here's how we do it. It's very easy. Copy this down just how it looks without the absolute value. All right, then all you're going to do is you're going to copy this inequality down. Remember, less than, ANDs. Okay, so you're making this an AND problem. You have to have less than signs, and then change the sign on the 3 here. So you're just going to do that. And then solve it. It's really easy. So plus 2, plus 2, plus 2. -1, less than x, less than 5. All right, and again, our rule is, for this class anyway, we can get away with saying that all AND problems, we're going to shade in between the numbers. All right, these are both open circles this time. And then we're going to shade in the middle because x is in the middle of these two. So here's my answer. There's my graph if the problem asks me to graph it. All right, so Some heavy stuff here. Please, 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 please just notice the only ones I ever have to change how they look are the absolute values, are the ones I have to split up. Don't split the regular ones. The compound ones are already split. They're already compound. So please don't do that. That's where students make mistakes. All right, if you have trouble with this, you're having a lot of questions, you're not getting the answers that they have on the answer sheet on your review, please stop in and see your teacher and get it straightened out, because it's actually very, 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 very easy to do once you sit down and work through a couple examples. All right, hope it helps. Thanks.